The number one question that we get in the posts
I didn't get
summit
a shout out.
surveys, we've done reviews to see what people like, what they don't like. And the number one question that has come up consistently now is, great, it's good to hear about, what to do for sponsor, how to create value for sponsor. How do I meet the sponsor in the first place? So networking and meeting sponsors is what we're going to get into next in this last session. And we have, don't come up yet, but we have Andre Jackson from Toyota, Tom Bogner, who I worked with for almost a decade at Lucas Oil, and Tony Yorkman, who Steve Williams worked with at K&N Filters for a couple of decades. We're going to talk about how do you meet new sponsors. But before that, we have to back up, because when you do meet a sponsor, then you're going to have to actually present them with something. And where's Megan? Let's put us both up. There's a difference out there, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, so I'm going to go over it very quickly this time. But there's a difference between DEX proposals and proof of performance reports. The goal is to meet somebody. So you use something like a deck, a marketing material that's colorful. As Steve Williams was texting me earlier, it could be a PDF flyer. It could be a video. You use that to meet somebody. And then once you meet them and they get to know you and they understand the program, then it transitions to what can you do for them and what can you propose for a relationship. And a proposal then puts into writing the deliverables that you're going to give and execute on and what you expect in return. Now, let's say you get that sponsorship. That's pretty cool. You need them to renew. Look at Ron Capps. We need renewals. Renewals is the key to longevity and making a career out of racing. And you only get renewals through proof of performance reports. And that's the document that shows that what you've done along the way. And so, Megan, I'm going to hand it over to you. DEX proposals, proof of performance reports. What do we see people doing wrong all the time, and what should they be doing differently? And then we'll jump into networking.
Yes. Well, really quick. So like you said, a deck is to get their attention. And I do want to back up to the first session where Jackie and a couple of the other speakers said that they don't want you to hand them a deck like at PRI show and just expect an answer right away. So the best time to send a deck is after you have had that first meeting with a company, and that could be with the marketing director, it could be with their social media manager, it could be with someone in the creative department, just anybody there. The best thing to do is have a meeting with them, whether on Zoom or in person, really get to know that company and what their goals are, and then take that and turn it into a deck about how you can reach their target market. If they're looking to do sampling, or if they have research, if they have a new product coming out and they want to do research and development, how can you help them out with that? So use the deck to meet their goals. And then once they love that, then you turn it into a proposal. And a proposal is just a very simple business plan. It's basically just says, this is what you're going to do and what they are going to do. And so I do want to share my screen really quickly and show you guys that Alex and I have created a proposal template for you. You can get it on his website, meetthesponsors.com/templates. And on there, it will take you to this screen. You will just click this button, download template. It is $75. And if you use the coupon code SUMMIT, you will save 20% off, which I think is like $19, something like that. So use the code SUMMIT. You can save on the proposal template, and everything is written out for you. You just have to fill in the blanks in that document. And I think it's about 8 or 9 pages long. And so then once they approve of that proposal, you'll sign a contract, you fulfill what you're supposed to do throughout the year. And then either at the end of the year or end of contract. So like Travis said, it was 18 days for him with Sheets. Then the best thing to do is send a proof of performance report, which is basically, you want to have all the links to articles and press that you've gotten. So like we just talked about in that last session, and then put in there all the pictures and videos. So if you are doing sampling, like the ones that I showed you, where we have the table out in front of the store, you can definitely see the cans on the table, the sample of that drink, and seeing me hand it to people. You want to show all that type of stuff, proving what you did. So whatever it is that in that very first meeting, they said, well, this is our goals. and then you came up with a creative plan of how to get there, then you got to show them what you did for them, and that will help you with renewal. You can then use that proof of performance report as a case study to help you get a new sponsor from there. And that's something I think Alex put in his book, right?
That's a really good point. It's the proof of performance report is what you use when you're soliciting new sponsors. And remember, when you make your proof of performance report, it's not how well did you do. I got, I won 5 races and I got on the podium 7 times. It's how well did your sponsor do? And make the proof of performance report about the media your sponsor got by tagging along with you. Make it about them. And it has to be accurate. And the purpose of the proof of performance report is so that the marketing director that you're working with, perhaps it's a sponsorship director, might be a seasoned executive, who knows, they can use that to sell it to their boss and move it up the ladder in the company so the CEO or the CFO signs off on it for next year's budget. Remember, you're giving people who are your advocates. They sponsored you and they like what you're doing. Now they have to sell it to their boss to renew. And what you're doing is you're giving them that content, because a lot of times those marketing directors that you're dealing with, they're not the ultimate decision makers. They get a budget and they get to allocate that budget. But if their budget declines, or let's say your cost of racing is cut from that budget, even if they like what you're doing, there's nothing they can do for you. So help them sell it to their boss. That's the key with these reports. There are 3 reports, keep them different: a deck, a proposal, and a proof of performance report. So now let's queue up Tom, Andre, and Tony, and we're going to talk about networking. How do you meet people in the first place? I'll tell you guys a quick story. And it must have been 2006 or 2005. I went to a small event. It was a cool one. I used to like this. I don't think they do them anymore. It's called the Motorsports Marketing Forum. And I believe it was in Las Vegas. It was a small event with only a couple hundred people in attendance, which was awesome, because the smaller the event, the easier it is to meet people. And so I went to the Motorsports Marketing Forum. It was primarily based around NASCAR at the time, but and I was in at Core Championship Off-Road Racing. So I was just representing off-road vehicles, or off-road racing series. But I knew that there would be sponsors there. And sure enough, it just so happens that I sit next to a little old man whose name was Les Unger. Really nice guy, really cool guy. He and I hit it off. We got along. We chatted. I didn't realize that he ran Toyota's motorsports program at the time, but he was also old, so he was retiring. He was kind of getting ready to leave. He introduced me to Don Brown, a person who worked with him. And then I got to know Don. And from Don, I went in to visit Don one day. Well, Don wasn't in the office. Guess who was? Andre was in the office. And so Andre and I met. And that was, I think, in 2007, Andre, right? I think I've known you now.
It sounds about right. I was very new in the group, so maybe 2008, maybe.
You were new. I was relatively new to racing. I'd probably been in racing for 3 years, maybe. I mean, not very long at that time. And I know you had just started out, and we came and we met you. That's when Toyota was still in Los Angeles.
Yes.
It's not there anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
And fast forward maybe another 5 or 6 years, you contributed to my book, and a lot of what you spoke about was networking, how important networking is. Let's go there right now. Let's talk about networking real quick. What advice do you have? And you've been listening to some of the stuff on the call. Advice to racers who are looking for sponsors. How do you do it? How do you meet somebody?
I will first thank you again, Alex, for having me. You've got a very powerful panel here, and I've been listening pretty much since the beginning at 4 o'clock. But everything that's been said on this call has been dead on. I mean, there's nothing I would change and can add. I mean, it's the relationship. It is the first impression. It is the conversation. It is the trust. It is all of those things. And I would say to the drivers that are listening, that if you know Toyota doesn't do anything fast. Number 1 car company in the world. They're going to take their time in making every decision, period, be it product, be it racetracks, be it whatever it is, it's going to be a slow and deliberate decision. So I would say, if I were to put a word on it, I would say be patient. It'll be patience. Networking doesn't mean you'll come to one, after race mixer and then, you're golden. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a lot of time. I'll give you an example. There's a gentleman by the name of Steve Torrance. Steve Torrance and I met in about 2009. Steve Torrance approached us probably 4 times on different occasions. He finally found the right timing, and he's part of the Toyota family now. And by the way, I want to officially welcome Mr. Caps to the Toyota family. Ron, we'll spend some more time together. Hopefully I'll get out to more races, but it's good to see you. Good to have you. But that's just one example. Antron Brown, ambassador for Toyota. He still networks, and he's been with us for 16 years. So it doesn't end. You know, you got to be patient, be persistent. There's no end game. It's all about the relationship. It doesn't matter with Toyota, whether it's NHRA, whether it's NASCAR, whether it's off-road, whether it's drift. You know, the Joe Gibbs relationship we have didn't start overnight. Joe had to put some work in, you know, and now that's been a 20-year relationship, roughly.
All good things take time.
Mhm.
And all good things take time, especially if you want it to be solid with deep roots.
Mhm.
And relationships need to be that way.
Absolutely.
You very rarely is a sponsorship director going to give anything, whether it's cash or product, to
Mhm.
somebody they don't know. But
Mhm.
over time, if they know you and they know who you are, who your personal values are, your integrity, and they like it, then they're going to want to associate with it. So yeah, absolutely. Let's do
Absolutely.
this. Tony Yorkman is someone who I used to bump into the races back in the core days many times. And I don't think it was until maybe 10 years later that I was working at Lucas Oil that Tony and I actually started working together. So Tony and I have had probably more bump-ins at PRI and SEMA and races than I can count. That didn't lead at that time to any kind of sponsorship, but it led to a friendship and a relationship. And now I consider Tony a very close friend. And Tony, let's talk about when teams approach K&N, what is the best way to network and meet that doesn't take 10 years? Or does it all take long?
No, you know, some of the stuff you can definitely say it is a longer investment than others. But, you know, Alex, we're a true definition of networking and what we've achieved, whether it be the Team Lucas partnership or something we've done on some of our personal endeavors, right? They've gone back and forth. And even on the sponsor summit, right? I mean, the sponsor summit's a bunch of networking, and it's using some of the relationships you've built to not only help not only to help your personal endeavors, but also help your partner's endeavors. And I think that's a big piece that's missing from when you talk about networking. It goes both ways. You know, Andre and I had actually had a relationship a number of years ago too. And I think it came from a networking thing where we did the NHRA Horsepower Challenge, and he was generous enough to give us some Toyotas to be part of that whole program. And that was a networking partnership that we achieved through a mutual relationship. Point is that, you know, as a racer, you have an obligation to your partner to help them further their business, and that business can be helping them sell whatever items they might be selling at that time, but it's also to help them work with the other people that can help them sell as well. You know, there's some of the biggest racing series out there. NHRA is one of them. I think again, and Andre and I met at the NHRA sponsor summit. Those were networking events that we worked together on, and I've built a lot of alliances in those ways. Just as I have perfect examples of when I've worked with a racer and they've connected me with different people.
I miss those NHRA sponsor summits. I have to say, the one thing I do miss about not being involved at the corporate end anymore is going to that NHRA sponsor summit, especially the one up in Sonoma. Tom Bogner, you and I and Tammy and Chrissy were there. And, you know, we go to the summit, we then go to wineries afterwards. So let's have a damn good time. Tom, you can address the whole networking thing, because not only did you manage all the motorsport sponsorships for Lucas Oil for a long time, but Tony and you sponsored each other. You sponsored his teams and he sponsored your team because you also raced jet cars. So you knew Tony before I knew Tony, or probably around the same time. I think you're muted, Tom.
You're muted.
Tom, you're muted. Oops.
Yeah, better.
That's better, but now we can't see you. You just hit the wrong button, see?
And you know
Tom
what?
is my age. And when you get old guys using this technology.
Yeah,
So-
hang on. I'll get it back.
There it is. Now we got you.
There it is.
Right on.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. Is my sound okay?
You sound good. You
Yes.
sound good. You
And
look good, man.
you
You
guys
working
both
out?
have boys in tech.
Yeah.
You know what? I can make a hell of a race oil, but maybe not so much on the internet. But you know, I agree with
That's
what
good.
everybody here has been talking about on the partnerships and sponsorships and marketing. It's relationships, and the relationships with a lot of the folks that are on here tonight go way back. And for me, at the time, you know, at one point I was supporting close to 600 teams through Lucas Oil, and some of those were in New Zealand, Australia, you know, Canada. Um, but Lucas Oil, when I began 18, you know, over 18 years ago, was a pretty small company. And that networking was really important to get our brand in front of people. And the best way for me was to go out and be with people, go out to racetracks, go to events, speak on a seminar, whatever it took, right, Alex?
You know, it's funny you say that it was a small company and then over the years it grew, because I think a lot of companies do that. They start very small, they with good people who bring in good relationships, they grow to be quite sizable. And then many new people in the company kind of forget where the heritage of the company, where it came from and the relationships. And K&N and Lucas, because K&N's a filter, Lucas is oil, very close relationship, very close working relationship. And that's, I think, one reason why you and Tony got to know each other so well and work together. You made oils and he made filters. How did you
Right.
meet
And
Tony? You never told me. You know, we were at PF
so
Chang's a few years ago, the three of us just hanging out at dinner, but I never asked, how did you guys meet?
I think I actually probably met him at K&N in Riverside, but also it could have been even SEMA show or at the racetrack, because we were all activating. We were very active in front of our customer base, which was doing trade shows, whether it was a hot rod show or at an NHRA race, you know, at Pomona. And before Tony was Bob Harris, and Bob and I used to meet at Lucas Oil and actually talk about racers that we could possibly partner with. How can we grow K&N and Lucas together and maybe even save some money along the way by reducing each of our costs? So Tony and I, you know, we obviously hit it off, and I can't thank everybody at K&N. Steve Williams, you know, we were part of the dynoing with the oils over at K&N Engineering on their own dyno. So I couldn't have had those relationships without guys like Tony that were in the marketing side.
So let me reverse it then, Tom, real quick. It's when a racer back in the day wanted to meet you, what were the more effective methods? Like when, you know, so you just mentioned 600 race teams at one point under your management. How did those guys get sponsored by you? What did they do to meet you? And did you always meet in person, the team you were sponsoring, or did you ever just sponsor somebody through the marketing material that they sent because it looked good?
That's a good point right there. There was plenty of times that I would take a look at what we call a deck, and maybe it was an area that Lucas Oil was looking into, you know, expanding. Maybe there was some interest. Maybe it was something I saw in their presentation that I liked. But in general, it was probably more of a personable, like meeting somebody in person and then following them and seeing what they were doing. And are they proactive? Are they, you know, just going to put a decal on a car and run a quarter mile or an eighth mile down the track?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wanted people that would actually help me on the R&D side while building a brand of excitement with racing. And, you know, I can even talk about Megan. We go way back to junior drag racing when my son was junior racing, and Lucas was supporting her when I came on board, and her sister. And, you know, they were actually doing well at the track, and we actually met face to face, I think the first time in Denver at the Western Conference Finals. And, you know, I got to see her race firsthand, and we were introducing a new oil that I was developing, and they were a key part of that program. But
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
so it's not always face to face, but I like the face to face.
It is. And the NHRA Sponsor Summit was a great place where NHRA actually put sponsors together. They did like speed dating. And I adopted that with Team Lucas, where I would put sponsors and just brands together for 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a table, and you kind of switch tables. Andre, you and I met many times at the NHRA Sponsor Summits in Sonoma. You
Yes.
represented Toyota. I represented Lucas Oil several times with Tom. Tom was there.
Yes.
Those are pretty cool events. What are some other really effective organizations or events that you've gone to where they put sponsors together or people together? Because that was pretty unique, I thought.
I thought it was awesome. I missed those days too, and being part of that part of the team and everything. That really, I've been to different versions of that. Like Coletta, they had something very, very similar where they brought all of their, sponsors and business partners together.
Yep.
Same type of format.
Yep.
Just one-on-one, sit at this table, be it a dinner, reception. They would have just a what they call like brainstorming session they did one time. Very effective. A lot of the exchanging of the cards and information. They made sure that everyone was moving around the network, and just very, very similar to the NHRA Summit. I thought that was a great way to do it.
That's funny you said that. I did that once with John Force. John was sponsored for a year by Lucas Oil, and I went to the John Force Summit. It was also in Sonoma. It's coincidental. I've done one in Las Vegas with Bryce Menzies. He did a sponsor summit. I thought that was excellent. If a driver on this call wanted to attend some type of a summit, or they're not in marketing, so they probably wouldn't go to the NHRA Sonoma Summit, but what are some events where drivers can meet people like yourself, maybe like Paul Dolshall, who you work with, or where can they meet Tom and Tony? What
that there's no right or wrong answer to that one, Alex, to be honest. I mean, it's like I was going back to my first point about being consistent and being around, being persistent, if you will, whether you're a current driver, whether you're not even in NHRA, whatever it is, it's being present and not coming with something like your hand out with a deck or anything. It's like, hey, let me get to know you, or I've got a way to help Toyota sell 100,000 more Toyotas or something. There's something that you want and can bring to the table, or engage when you see me or Paul or a lot of our executives attend NHRA events. Something to help you engage. It could be a small thing, it could be a big thing, but staying current, staying persistent, I think is no matter where you are, I think would be my advice.
This is going to date me a little bit, but back when I wrote the book and you and I were chatting again, I think it was 10 years ago when I interviewed you for it. This new thing called Instagram was out there, and somebody had posted on the Toyota that they were driving, and they did it organically. It wasn't even an ad. They weren't even sponsored by you, but you noticed it and you're like, hey man, he keeps posting and I keep noticing this. And that got your attention, which ultimately led to sponsorship. I forget who it was, but
I'm trying to remember too.
But
I remember what you talked about.
We talked about it. But that's a neat way. So you saw through this new thing, social media.
Well, there was a driving force. We had a vice president. His name was Ed Laukus. He's retired now.
Yeah.
But Ed was all about social media as it was developing. I joined the team officially in 2009. Ed came aboard and he made all of us under him get a Facebook account, no matter what, because Toyota was bringing their corporate efforts to Facebook at the time, and they're tied directly to Instagram. So we ended up having a whole department just for that. And now that's a huge department now. So just over time, it developed, it grew. And a lot of the points earlier were based on social media efforts. It's all about social media now, which is another way to network, to your point.
I was going to ask you about that. Is social media as effective as obviously in person is always best, but now we can't see everybody who's all across the world. You can see them online. It's hard to meet up with someone in face to face when you're far away. But is social media becoming an effective way for drivers to meet you and others at Toyota in order to get considered for sponsorship?
I guess probably the short answer, yes. We look at that with drivers we're going to consider and drivers that we currently have. We look at the following. We look at how far they reach, how many followers they have, and things like that. We have a whole group that does just that now. Because as we all know, and it's been mentioned, Ron Camps, mentioned it, it's kind of the way of the world now. Whether you have a publicist, whether you have a dedicated social media person, you're kind of missing out if you don't have some sort of social media presence.
Yeah,
I think another way to kind of explore for the racers interaction when it comes to networking and getting into, say, a summit type format would be at some of the trade shows. Alex, how far you forgot about where you're starting. And I remember the very first summit I did was at PRI for Alex. We did I think it was like a marketing
That was your first?
Was
I
it-
didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, PRI, I don't know, what was that? 10,
Yeah, it was a
12,
panel
10,
discussion on marketing and
10 or 12
sponsorships.
years ago. And I think that there was, a packed room and there was standing people in the background. And it was, I think this was, maybe this might've been pre Team Lucas days. But anyways, the point being is that, I would look at some of the trade shows that are out there, and I echo somebody's sentiments earlier, is that I don't want to be at a trade show and receive a deck. Obviously, if there's an opportunity for us to shake a hand and do a small introduction and maybe grab something, great, but I definitely don't want to have a conversation. I'm at a trade show because I'm there to do business for a company, and that's my intention. I'm not there to, let's say, buy. So I say that my suggestion would be to keep it light. If there's a window, take advantage of that, but more use it as an intro for a follow-up. But definitely use those trade shows, see some of the things that are going on in the backgrounds. Again, Alex, you hosted at a number of the different events, and SEMA does it, PRI does it. There's a bunch of endemic marketing opportunities, CES, and some of those things that you think that could be fit, and work towards those, because you'll get in front of some of the professionals that you normally wouldn't get access to. And you'll have probably a little more concentrated attention when you're listening to what they have to say. It means that you're taking it in.
So one thing that you always said, Tony, was a driver who's reaching out to K&N needs to understand what K&N's plan is. What's your plan? If you don't know the plan, then you don't really know where the money's going to be spent in the budget and what the goals are. And trade shows are a good way to learn what the plan is, because trade shows is where you see the latest products and maybe packaging or styles or designs. Usually trade, let me just ask it this way. At a trade show like PRI or SEMA, how much of that trade show is introducing new products, which might be part of the future plan, versus just doing the same old thing, trying to get more retailers to carry the product?
I think there's a difference, in what the trade show is, whether it is a true trade show or if it's a consumer type show or something along those lines. Those are going to be two different approaches, right? And you're right. I mean, we're as a manufacturer of parts, you would typically attend those trade shows to promote what are new products, but in some of the cases, you want to show off what your new initiatives may be. SEMA is a great place where you meet with your different retailers, distributors, to talk about what your marketing pull-through plans are going to be. For a racer to go and take some of that stuff in would be a great opportunity to figure out what their plan is. And I know Megan has heard me say this a half a dozen times. And I know you've heard me say it in person, Alex, a number of times, but my age old is, my job was never to build a plan around an opportunity, but find opportunities to fit my plan. And I've always held on to that piece. And it's something that I think I've said in probably a half a dozen of these sponsor summits as I go through, because I really think it's important to understand that approach before you make it. Because if you understand their plan, you're going to be able to get to the end result a lot faster for that sponsor.
Yeah, that's true. And I noticed that when I walk trade shows now, I usually set up my appointments in advance. If I'm going to actually meet somebody or try to meet somebody new, I try to set that up in advance and have it on the schedule. And if I don't, you're relying on luck to meet people and bump into them. But one thing you can do at trade shows is look and see what new products are coming out. Like, oh, K&N now has an oil. I remember walking a trade show, seeing K&N oil out on the shelves one day. It's like, oh, that's interesting. And then all of a sudden there's K&N has, HVAC products. Oh, that's pretty cool too. I wasn't at that trade show. You told me that when that happened. But you can learn a lot about what the company's future is. And then maybe that's how you get in and represent that company, is by taking these new products that they're launching and releasing and offer to represent them. Robbie Woods did a really good job of that at Lucas Oil when Lucas launched Slick Mist. Robbie, everybody was representing the oils and the stabilizers, but nobody represented Slick Mist with Lucas yet. So Robbie did. And that led to a pretty decent sizable sponsorship for a couple of years. He was a Slick Mist driver. Tom, do you remember that? What is that how you picked drivers, was to represent different brands?
On occasion we would pick a product and launch it on something. And some of them, I take like the tractor pulling, for example. Your demographic is a lot of farmers. So why not put a huge stabilizer, Lucas Oil stabilizer bottle on the side of that big 4-engine Hemi tractor, or a new product like Lucas Oil Deep Clean, or, something you're going to get plenty of images, you're going to get videos on it, and you're going to get exposure. So yeah, I mean, Robbie he was good. He liked to show off that slick mist, and there again, know your products, like know the products that you're seeking support from. Don't put a deck into somebody or try to call somebody and you don't even know what the products, what they manufacture. What I used to really enjoy was when I would receive a proposal or a marketing deck from someone, and they would list out how many quarts of oil they needed to really support their product. They didn't ask for money, because oil is money. They asked for a specific if I could have, if you could support me with 8 6-packs of 20W50 semi-synthetic, that oil works exceptional. It's kept my bearings alive, So know the products. I used to receive proposals from people that just would mark monetary. We're an oil company. Like, tell me what really will support you, and then how can you help me sell it? Do you have somebody in the family that has a business, maybe an automotive repair shop, that we can introduce some of these products to as well, right? So it's really important that you can understand what you need to network, and then make it happen.
Well, let's go a little deeper on that one for a second. When someone is approaching you, or did, let's say in the past, that's obviously you're not there anymore, neither am I. But how much of what would an average sponsorship look like, and how much product would be centered around one specific product versus a broad range? Like Lucas had 200 SKUs or something back in the day. Did you always sponsor with a sampling of everything, or one person specifically needed gear oil, so they only got gear oil? What did a sponsorship look like?
So when it started, I mean, we would send out, and I remember back in 2005, we were supporting some teams in NASCAR. We didn't really have a specific product yet for those engines. And some of these teams would order a pallet of 20W50, and
For their cars.
I knew, and I'd say, and I'm like, Forrest, what are they using this for? Whether maybe they're trading it, I don't know. So I had to learn a lot of what teams need. I had to find out, and then I started racing myself. I knew what it took in a super gas car, a super comp car, and an H rig, because I had one, So we started out, we would kind of introduce and allow them to have fuel treatments, problem solving additives, whatever in the beginning, because some of those products didn't have the exposure they have today. Then eventually we necked it down into a kit that we would provide the teams that had a few bottles of each. And that was my idea before I left. Instead of giving away the fort from now on, they could go buy the fuel treatment. Let's give them samples of new products and a couple others, and then send it to them and have them on their social media networks promote those products. So we're giving them a few bottles, but they have an opportunity now to talk about those products on their social and their networking, help network and grow that product in front of the masses. So things changed a lot in 18 years while I was there.
And they're changing fast in the last 18 months too. I mean, things are evolving very rapidly. We're entering a whole new world where it's no longer just physical marketing, physical at the track and on television. There's a whole new digital world out there with live streaming. And as what George Hamill, who's here helping me out on the back end of the tech, was he integrated Starlink into the Mint 400 and had it on race cars. So now in the past, whenever you wanted to see footage, like in-car camera footage of a desert racer, it would be a GoPro chip that you'd have to take out, and obviously tape delay. You couldn't film that live or broadcast that live. Now with Starlink, you can broadcast that live. So it's taken a whole new level of technology and a whole new level of visibility and tools that we have that we can use in order to help sponsors, whether it's with broadcast or with entertainment or with spreading messages, even making connections. It's the world is changing very rapidly. And if we're not ahead of it, we're going to get behind, because if you're not creating content on a daily basis, you're getting behind those who are. It's very, very important to make sure you stay current. Tony, real quick, K&N, was it the same thing? It's in terms of network? Go ahead.
Yeah, it pretty much aligned the same way. We had fewer products among our line. But, you know, our thing was always looking to say, hey, I want it to be in every possible scenario within your household, meaning every partnership we went into, we didn't want to give them any kind of reason not to run a K&N product. So we made sure that we made that into consideration going into each year. And what that was saying, hey, we had, if we added a product line to it, so we would tell everybody, hey, it better be in every part of your race car, but it's more importantly needs to be in your everyday car because that's what consumers can connect with. So we better make sure your wife's Honda has it in her car, and your lawnmower better be, you know, running fresh with it, those type of things. And as we expanded the product lines, you know, that we had to take that into consideration too. And quite honestly, the ones that could perform and deliver throughout those multiple product lines were the ones that got more priority. There was a lot of times we came up with conflicts and we had to address it in that kind of way. But as you know, as it went on, you know, your budgets didn't exactly grow adjacent to what what your product lines were. So, you know, we couldn't afford to give every person the same growth, right? So we had to pull it from somewhere, and so it took priority. So anybody that can expand on those lines and that were diligent in making sure that they were exposed, and the pieces that were outside of just the race vehicle were the ones that got our biggest attention.
Right on, right on. Well, we just have like 4 minutes left, so I just want to go around the panel real quick. Let's go Andre, Tom, and then Tony. Any last words of advice for racers seeking sponsorship? And does not have to do with networking. It could be anything that maybe we didn't cover that you think we should have, or go a little deeper on. What?
I think, man, if they've been on the whole call, I mean, everybody did a wonderful job, you know, covering pretty much everything that I can think of. I'll end my comments with a story that you and Tom Bogan are very familiar with. This goes back to 2009. My vice president pulls me in his office on a Monday morning. He says, listen, he said, I sat down with this guy, Forrest Lucas. Have you heard of him? I said, no, I think his kid runs Top Fuel Dragster. He's not that great. He says, well, I want us to do some business with him. I want us to partner with him. And we argued. I said, Ed, I don't know if he can put us in a winner's circle, blah, 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 blah. Ed was like, just get it done. Well, Forrest, smart as he was, he never asked for money. He had already bought his field team Toyotas to drive before he even presented anything to us. He and Ed shared a bag of popcorn at a sprint dirt track race. True story. And so that morphed into the short versions. That morphed into, he told Ed, hey, I've got a off-road series. And he knew we were promoting our new Tundra back then. And he says, why don't you guys come over and be the official truck for my off-road series? And the rest is literally history.
Nice.
So that's, you know, Forrest and Charlotte are two of my favorite people, and I always like to tell that story. So I will end with that. You just never know. Persistence and consistency to all the new drivers coming up. Big sponsor, small sponsor, be present and be consistent.
Be present, be consistent. Thank you, Andre. That's awesome. Thank you. Tom?
Well,
Last
I have
words
one
of
thing.
advice.
I definitely have to thank Andre really quickly for the 10 years that I drove that Toyota Tundra Rock Warrior.
That's
that
right.
was supported by K&N. That
Yes.
I'll never forget the day I was able to drive down there. Lucas Oil bought the truck, and you know, taking care of our partners as we should. And I met you down in Redondo or Torrance at the Toyota.
Torrance, yeah.
I didn't even know what I was going to be driving. I show up there and it's a Rock Warrior, you know. So I made sure I had that truck towing dragsters to the starting line, whatever I could do. So
You were a great ambassador, Tom. You were a great ambassador, brother.
Nah, you know what? I enjoyed every minute we all had together, and I appreciate it. You know, but I think never give up is some advice I'd have. I used to, you know, I'd be approached by people year after year after year, and sometimes they would be discouraged and say, you know, I turn in a proposal every year, and it just constantly get turned down. And you never know when somebody is changing directions. So never burn a bridge and never give up, and always put your best foot forward and sell. You're selling yourself out there. So sell yourself, keep positive. You know, I'm starting all over. I'm starting a whole new career right now, but I look at the 18 years that I was very fortunate to be a part of Lucas Oil and how much I learned. And the racing I was able to do, never look back, just move forward. And thank you for having me on here.
Well, thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. And those trucks that you were talking about, the Tundras, those actually became the K&N protection trucks, not the K&N safety trucks. All series have a
Yes.
safety truck.
Yes, they
But
did.
Tony and I came up with the protection truck because filters protect your engine. Tony, last words of advice, and maybe you can explain the protection trucks real quick.
Well, yeah, I guess protection trucks, that was actually a great term that was coined, and I will have to actually give you credit on that. I think that was yours in the way of, it was part of our tagline in going into that year, and it became a piece that we wanted to push on, and we weren't really interested in being part of the safety series sponsor, but Alex came up with a great term that fit our plan, right? The K&N protection trucks, and he made that alliance. He made that piece fit our plan. So I think that, that was a perfect example and a great one to end on there. But I will say that my last bit will be probably a little suggestion from just what I've heard on this piece earlier, which was Travis's story earlier about how he humbled himself and went back and he took a reapproach. He learned a lot. He took a non-endemic partner, and he thought he knew exactly what he needed to make it happen. Then found out that he really wasn't approaching it right, and then took a readjust, humbled himself, and actually went and explained. I think it's a great testimonial to who he is and how he's able to be a marketer for this for Sheets as a company. And I think it works. And he went overboard, really over delivering on what they wanted by saying, yes, you bought this, but I'm going to show you how you can get so much more. So that would be one of my main pieces. But I would say the last B would be anybody on this call should go back and look at some of the previous sponsor summits. I know a lot of these sponsor summits are themed. It's Alex poises them that way very specifically. So it grabs some attention. We get some very specific people that have inside knowledge, but that knowledge spreads across all forms of motorsports. I really believe that. I've been on quite a few of them in person and on the webinars. And I think anybody can go back and learn quite a bit if they can go back to the ones that we just had on off-road racing. I guarantee there's a lot of similarities in those ways, because people like me, when I was at K&N, we didn't just do drag racing. We did NASCAR, we did off-road, we did all those pieces. And if you can find the ways that those fit, you'll hear a lot of key talking points from people on how to get those edges in on a sponsorship.
Thank you, Tony. Really appreciate it. And what you were saying about Travis is right on, because again, this is a very diversified summit. We had a very diversified panelist, and the only way we're going to get new eyeballs into the sport of motorsports is with new eyeballs. It's, that's how it grows. We can't keep marketing to the same old people. We need to bring in different demographics, and we need to bring in youth, and youth are using media way differently than the way we used media. We, as in me, 50-year-old man, when I was younger. Today, the youth are growing up in a physical world and a digital world, and we have to market to them and reach them digitally as well as physically. And Travis with the app, with Sheets, and making content, to Megan's program making content. And I wanted to, before I forget, let's pull Megan up, and then I'm just going to close, and I'll let Megan close. One thing that's very important, and when you're making content, I didn't get to go into this, but I have in prior summits, and I'll do it again, is we're living in a world where there's this paradox between the number of followers somebody has on social media and the age of the content, because the longer your content is online, the more people see it. That's great, right? Well, maybe. It's only good if your content is current and relative. If your content ages because it's about prices or products or promotions that expire, then you have this paradox of more and more people seeing older and older content that relates to your brand. So your brand is looking older and older to more and more people. It's very important to make sure your content is value-based, based on morals and values, and not based on promotions and products. That way the content stays evergreen, because the values don't change over time of a consistent company. And that's key. Now, I want to thank everybody who's been on the call. I'm going to let Megan close. But before I do that, I want to take a quick minute to ask everybody two things. One is, please share, if you thought this was helpful, please tell your friends about it. The recording will be available. so others can watch this and get the information. But share with us your thoughts too. Let me know, let Megan know, send me an email. My email address is meetthesponsors@gmail.com, MEET, the sponsors @gmail.com. Send me just a quick email. What did you like? What did we not talk enough about? What would you like to learn next time? What should we go deeper on? I want feedback. And if you give me feedback, you can attend the next summit for free. I'll send you a complimentary pass to the next summit. Don't know what it is yet, but it'll be some type of motorsports summit or sponsorship summit. Please, it helps me put these on. So Megan, I'd like you to close. Did I forget anything? There's so much information and my mind's going a million different ways. I often forget a lot, but you seem to wrap it up really nicely for me all the time.
Yes, well, thank you. And I've been on each of your summits and I take notes every single time. Like like Tony said, even though like there's new speakers, it could be different types of racing, I still learn something every time. So I want to thank all of our speakers that joined us tonight. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to sit down and talk with us and share your tips and advice and how racers can work with you. The whole point of why we are doing these sponsorship summits is to just improve the quality of our motorsports industry and improve how racers approach companies for sponsorships. We want to get away from the old school way of doing it and really focus on providing value for a company instead of just saying, hey, I'm going to put your logo on the side of my car, because that really does nothing nowadays. And so thank you guys so much for coming on tonight. And I want to thank all of the attendees that came on live. I love seeing all the familiar faces, whether it's someone from my team or one of my students or, someone new. Thank you guys for, again, taking the time out of your evening to join us tonight. And yeah, and you can also shoot me a message or an email if you have any questions, or if you want the link for the recording to share it with a friend, or to give feedback as well. You can reach out to me in social media. My handle is meganmeyer.racing. You can also shoot me an email at hello@meganmeyerracing.com. And I will hopefully see you guys on the next one. And I thought that was pretty cool. Alex just said he'll give you a free ticket to the next one if you give some feedback. So we use that feedback to improve the summits each time. Like he said earlier, networking is the #1 question that people ask. So that's why we definitely wanted to include that topic in tonight. So so thank you guys for coming on tonight. And yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so
guys.
much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you at the next summit.
Yep. Good night.
Good night. Check out this background. Check it out. Yeah. George's going to pan the camera. Look at this.
Yeah, how cool is that? So thank you to Ashley Forrest Hood for allowing us to record the summit from the John Force Racing Museum in California.